My name is Leah Brown. I'm a 22-year-old college student majoring in accounts, and it's my third year. To support myself, I work part-time jobs, which I've been doing for the past 3 years. And in those years, there are many things I have seen, and among them, there's one that has scared me for life. It was the first year of my program when I had just started working part-time in a KFC, since I was a broke student and needed to find a way to support my financial needs. The pay was good for the hours that I worked, but I worked the closing shift because it was convenient for my college timing. I had often brought leftover chicken home with me since it saved me some money. It was one night when I was working a bit later than usual, and the manager of the place told me to clean up before closing. I was a little pissed because it wasn't my job, and I only had to do this because Nathan was absent today due to a fever. He was the one who usually stayed till late and cleaned up the place, but I couldn't decline the manager's request due to my timid personality. Even then, I was being irritated and grumpy from inside. As I was about to close up the counter, 3 men entered the restaurant with masks on their face. I agreed that the COVID pandemic had just left a few days ago, but people had already stopped wearing masks. Now, I don't know if it was just me, but they looked shady as hell. Not a single one of them wore a decent clean attire. Their clothes looked old and dirty, as if they haven't taken baths in days. They walked toward the counter, and one of them took out a badly folded note and ordered a bucket of chicken wings. I was feeling disgusted by them as an employee. I had to act polite, so I took their order and went inside the kitchen to tell the cooks about it. After that, I went back to the counter and stood there watching them. The 3 of them were still standing there. They haven't taken a seat yet, even though all of them were empty. I called out for them, asking them to take a seat, but they ignored me. So I let them be and started minding my own business. As the chef was done with the chicken and the order was ready, I called them and gave it to them. Instead of eating them inside the KFC, they went out. It was good for me because now I didn't have to wait for them to leave so I could start cleaning up the place. Anyway, as I was instructed, I completed my work and locked up the place behind me. As I was leaving, I couldn't help but notice those 3 still lurking around the KFC while nibbling those chicken wings that they had bought. They saw me leaving with the cook Philip, but luckily they didn't do anything to me. Philip used to live within walking distance from the outlet, while I, on the other hand, lived a bit far from the place. So after saying goodbye to him, I took out my scooter and drove off to my apartment. The next day, I was supposed to work the morning shift, so I woke up early, got ready, and headed out. As I was driving to the outlet, I was having a terrible feeling down in my gut, as if something very wrong was about to happen. I tried shaking it off, but no matter what I thought to distract myself, it didn't help at all. That was when I reached the KFC outlet. The front door was unlocked, which made me alarmed, so I opened it and went in. Everything looked normal, but the atmosphere still felt a bit eerie. I walked a bit further and went to the kitchen, when I noticed the fryer was on. I took a sigh of relief, thinking that it must be Philip who had unlocked the door and may have started working. "Philip, at least make a sound when you're around. People might get scared." Ah! I walked to the fryer while saying and screamed the moment I saw Philip's body parts being burned inside the fryer. I fell while continuously screaming. My heartbeat started to feel uneven as I couldn't handle the horrifying scene in front of me. So within minutes, I passed out. When I woke up, the manager was sitting in front of me, and his voice felt like it was coming from a distance. It took a few minutes for me to come to my senses, and as soon as I did, I noticed that we were still in the kitchen. The terrifying scene started to play in my mind, and I started screaming again. The manager tried to calm me down, and that was when I noticed that the police officers had surrounded the area, and they were carefully removing Philip's body parts from the fryer. A couple of officers came and started asking me questions about him. I told them every bit of detail from last night, including my suspicion on those 3 men that came in. They started to check the CCTV footage, and it was seen that Philip returned to the outlet after, I guess, he may have forgotten something and came back suddenly like that. A minute later, someone else entered KFC with an axe. I could recognize the 3 men from their weak physique, but this person wasn't one of them. Instead, it was someone with a giant-looking body and scars on his face. His one eye looked like it was a fake. The man was seen leaving the outlet around 4 a.m. As he was walking out, he stopped in the middle, looked toward the camera, and gave a nasty, evil grin, along with showing his middle finger toward it. I was completely freaked out by the guy. He was a complete psychopath. The police started searching for the man, and the posters with his face were also shown on every news channel. It turned out those 3 men were homeless junkies who had luckily found the curled up money that day. That was also the reason they were standing outside as we were leaving the place, because they had nowhere else to go. When they say not to judge a book by its cover, they're right about that. I had to learn it the hard way, as I didn't only judge 1 book by its cover, but 3 on top of that. I left the job almost immediately after that incident. I just couldn't bring myself to enter the outlet any longer. It's been 3 years now. The culprit still hasn't been found yet, and I'm still traumatized by that incident. The nightmares in which Philip's body is being fried in the KFC kitchen, they still haunt me to this day. And after that, I will always be extra care of my surroundings. You never know who could snap and just end up killing you. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. All my friends eat from KFC, so why should I be the one to eat your damn curry? I looked at the bowl filled with curry in disgust and said, "But son, you know we are poor. We cannot afford it," she said in a weak voice. "I don't care what you do, but I want KFC or else I won't eat anything." I stood up after saying that while she kept looking at me with those helpless eyes. "Son, please understand." Her voice was trembling, but I did not care and walked out of the house. My name is Juan Antonio. I'm 13, and I live with my mother Elena in a suburb slum in Oaxaca. My mother does housework in rich houses to earn a living for us, and that is also how she managed to send me off to a good school where mostly well-off kids go for education. Sending me to a good school must have been her way of assuring me of my future, but it kind of destroyed my present. I'm the only one who is different from others there. My clothes are worn off and have patches. Everything from my school bag and my books to my lunchbox are already used, which was given to Mama by the people she works for. And because of my poverty, I get bullied around by children around me. And not only that, but teachers treat me differently from others as well. All of this is taking a toll on my physical and mental health. But these past few days, I've started to steal some money from Mama to buy myself a good lunch, so they won't tease me for the food she makes. Just when I thought I would finally be rid of bullying at lunch, they started to show off their fancy sandwiches, burritos, and KFC's fried chicken that I could not afford no matter how much I steal from Mama. Recently, they've been making me miserable by eating fried chicken in front of me while they make me watch them. That is why I'm so frustrated by all of it. I want to eat from KFC too, so that I can show them that they are not the only ones who can eat good food. After misbehaving with Mama and rushing out of the house, I kept wandering around, looking at other children my age in the slum playing in the dirt, which felt disgusting to me. They were just as poor as me, but I had the privilege to attend a good school, so I had a feeling of superiority over them. That was when a girl around the age of 6 or 7 crashed into me while running, which made me feel angry. But as I saw her, she looked so weak that all her bones were showing. I helped her get up and wiped the dirt off her knees. Even her legs were all skin and bone. I turned around to have a good look at the other children. They were all the same figure. And that's when I realized that they don't even have the luxury to have a full meal. And here I was, complaining and making a fuss for not getting KFC's fried chicken, when Mama provides me with 3 square meals a day. Since it was the weekend, I went back home after roaming around for 3 hours or so. And when I did, Mama wasn't home. I kept waiting for her till the evening came, and when she came back, she looked all tired and worn out. She went to the kitchen first thing without even speaking a word to me. I guess it was because of this morning when I behaved badly toward her. I wanted to apologize so badly, but I didn't dare to do so. Mama, My words got stuck in my throat as I saw her bringing a KFC bucket full of fried chicken with a smile on her face. "Isn't this what you wanted to eat, son?" she said while sitting down beside me and placing the bucket in front of me. "How did you?" I asked in confusion. "Don't worry. Young madam from the house where I work today gave me some extra money for my services. You just eat," she said while washing with the same smile. I had never had chicken in my life, so I couldn't help myself and grab one from the bucket. As I tasted it, it felt so good that I started to cry. I offered Mama to eat it with me, but she denied it with the same smile and kept watching me eat. The next day, she brought home KFC again, and when I asked her about it, she told me that her new employer is quite generous. But one thing that felt heavy on my mind was that she never ate a single piece herself. Instead, she just kept watching me eat with a big smile on her face. One day when she was preparing my lunchbox as I was getting ready, she suddenly passed out. There was a local doctor in the suburb who used to treat the poor for free, so I immediately ran to his house and told him about my mama's condition. He told me my mama was suffering from malnutrition, which was rare, and there were chances of multiple organ failures as she has been overworking herself in this condition, so she needed complete bed rest. When she woke up, she kept insisting that she needed to go to work, but I strictly told her not to because she was in no condition to work. I had no one else, so if something was to happen to her, there would be no one I could rely on. Out of selfishness, I stopped going to school and started taking care of Mama. One day, 2 men came looking for my mama. I thought they must be from where she used to work, so I told them that Mom was ill and won't be able to continue working for them anymore. As they heard my words, they got angry and started breaking things from my home. They forced their way into our house and started dragging her with them. I kept struggling to pull them away from her, but I was too small and weak to do anything. That was when I saw the knife that Mama used to cook with. I don't know where I got the strength or power from, but I lunged at them with the knife. I stabbed one of them in the chest, and before the other who had grabbed my mama could understand what was going on, I stabbed his back multiple times. I was successful in killing one and brutally injuring the other. Mama had no energy to walk because of her weak body and all the bruises she had just received, but I knew that I had to take her away from this place. I hid their bodies within the house and started to think of a plan to get away from this. And that was when I thought of something. I somehow managed to steal a pulling cart and load her in that night when everyone had fallen asleep. After that, I set the house on fire and I ran away with her. As I was pushing the cart while panting, Mama looked at me, crying, and said, "I'm so sorry, my son, that you had to be born to a poor woman like me, who couldn't even afford chicken for you. If only I was a little well off, I wouldn't have to take money from them and put us all in danger like this." After saying that, she started crying louder like a baby. I know it wasn't her fault at all, but I couldn't bring myself to console her. She did her best to provide for me, but I was the greedy one. If only I didn't fight with Mama for KFC's chicken that day, none of this would have happened.
Born in Alberta, Canada in the late 1970s, a young Mark Twitchell dreamed of directing big-budget Hollywood blockbusters. It's only fitting that Mark was born around the same time as the first Star Wars movie was released, as the series became a lifelong passion of his. So much so that in 2007, he actually directed a feature-length fan fiction movie set in the Star Wars universe named Secrets of the Rebellion. The film depicts a series of events that occur just a few days prior to those of the original film, and also happens to include a cameo from Boba Fett actor Jeremy Bulloch. Secrets of the Rebellion was shot in full but remains in post-production and is unlikely to ever see the light of day. The same goes for another short film that Mark tried to make named House of Cards, a horror movie filmed entirely in an Edmonton garage he'd rented. Yet Mark's films are forever doomed to remain in the editing phase because, aside from filmmaking, Mark seemed to foster another passion: It was one that was not only considerably more sinister, but one that would result in him being sentenced to a minimum of 25 years in prison. About the same time that Mark was filming a short horror movie, a 38-year-old factory worker named Johnny Altinger was on top of the world. Having recently dipped his toe back into the dating pool, he was delighted to inform his colleagues that he'd actually managed to bag a date with a woman he'd met on Plenty of Fish. Given that Johnny believed he was well past his sell-by date, we can understand how excited he might be and how eagerly he might agree to meet a woman he'd only just met online. Johnny's coworkers were happy for him and wished him luck with his budding romance, so much so that when he failed to show up for work one day and they received an email from his account telling them that he and his date had eloped to Costa Rica, they were incredibly understanding. Sure, it'd take some extra work to cover his shifts, but love is love, and Johnny deserved happiness. Needless to say, Johnny's coworkers were heartbroken when they then received a resignation letter from him via email. They'd missed him, but it sounded like he'd been caught up in something of a whirlwind romance. It was impossible not to be happy for him. The only matter that remained was getting Johnny's forwarding address so his employers could mail his final paycheck to him. But bizarrely, Johnny didn't return their emails, and the likelihood of him being content to miss out on a hefty sum of money seemed extremely slim. Finally, after weeks of waiting and worrying, a handful of Johnny's friends broke into his apartment. They harbored a great deal of suspicion regarding their friend's little Costa Rican vacation and weren't prepared to just sit back and wait for the cops to do something. Yet the break-in only worried them even further when they found Johnny's travel luggage and passport still in his home. To them, it still wasn't entirely clear what was happening yet, but they knew it certainly couldn't be good. Johnny's friends went straight to the Edmonton Police Service with their foreboding collection of evidence, and it wasn't long before a homicide investigation was officially launched. By chance, one of the individuals interviewed in relation to Johnny's disappearance was none other than our wannabe Spielberg, Mark Twitchell. It appeared that Johnny had sold his car to Mark at some point in the previous weeks, and this might prove a rather fruitful lead. Mark might well be able to provide them with an insight into Johnny's state of mind, perhaps even recall something Johnny said that might point them in the right direction. The police had no reason to believe that Twitchell was a potential suspect, but they also knew that there was no way Johnny was in Costa Rica, unless he had smuggled himself across the border. So, when Mark mentioned that Johnny had expressed a desire to take a vacation, the police immediately became suspicious. The inclusion of such an obviously false assertion was enough for the police to arrest Mark Twitchell on Halloween of 2008 as a suspect in the murder of Johnny Altinger. As part of their investigation of Twitchell's involvement in the disappearance, police seized and analyzed all of his electronic devices. They hoped to find an incriminating text message, a sinister search history, anything to prove it was Mark who was guilty of the murder. The chances of finding anything were slim, and even then, proving its implications would be another task entirely. So, we can only imagine the pure shock of law enforcement officials when they found a document on Mark's computer that was simply titled Serial Killer Confessions. The opening passage of Serial Killer Confessions read as follows. This story is based on true events. The names and events were altered slightly to protect the guilty. This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer. The document went on to present an account of its narrator's planning, failed first attempt, and successful second attempt to lure a man to his garage and murder him, with fake online dating profiles used as bait. It also described the process of dismembering the body and attempts to dispose of the remains. It was a thinly veiled attempt to fictionalize what had evidently been a very real murder, as the account was so horrifyingly detailed that it was quite obviously a retelling of Mark's own experiences of murdering Johnny. Slowly, the truth became horrifyingly clear. Johnny lost his life so that Mark might be able to author a better true crime story. At his trial, Mark attempted to fabricate the idea that he had murdered Johnny in self-defense, and that the serial killer confession document he had authored was merely a coincidence. Yet, He was hard-pressed to explain another document that law enforcement had recovered from his laptop, one which was titled, "A Profile of a Psychopath." Despite his own insistence to the contrary, the prosecution argued that it was Mark's attempt to deeply analyze his own bizarre behavior and personality. This second document also detailed how, in the days leading up to Johnny's disappearance, Mark had purchased knives, plastic sheeting, saw blades, and a meat cleaver, all in preparation for creating what was described as a kill room in the rented garage. But perhaps the most damning piece of evidence the jury heard was the plot of Mark's short horror movie, House of Cards. They were told that the movie centered around an unfaithful husband, one that was lured to a discreet location under the pretense he was meeting a woman from a dating website. However, once he arrived, he was attacked and killed by a masked man as punishment for his infidelities. Mark hadn't just killed a man so he could write about the process more accurately. He had staged a grim reenactment of his own short film. Once these details emerged, the police were contacted by a man named Twitchell, a computer company contractor who seemed desperate to talk to them regarding the Mark Twitchell trial. Gilles told investigating officers that he too had been lured to a secluded location under the pretense of meeting a young man named Sheena, whom he'd been flirting with online for the past several days. But when he arrived, he found himself ambushed by a man in a hocket mask who attempted to subdue him with a stun baton. After a violent struggle, Gilles managed to escape, but did not report the attack to police out of sheer embarrassment. It was a clear replication of Mark's modus operandi, and suddenly, it became clear that Gilles was the one Mark mentioned in the first court document, a man the media dubbed the one who got away. As the trial progressed, the prosecution slowly pieced together a picture of who Mark Twitchell really was, a violent, deranged psychopath who masqueraded as a filmmaker, using the art form to recreate violent fantasies that he would later delight in making a reality. The jury had no problem finding him guilty of first-degree murder, and in April of 2011, Mark was given the maximum sentence by Canadian law, life in prison with no parole eligibility for a minimum of 25 years. But even after his imprisonment, grim details of Mark's fascination with murder and dismemberment continued to reach the ears of the public. Apparently, Mark's favorite TV show was Dexter, a series that chronicled the life of Dexter Morgan, a man with homicidal tendencies living a double life. He works as a forensic technician for the police department during the day, but after dark, he continues his work as one of Miami's most prolific serial killers. In May 2013, it was reported that Twitchell had purchased a television for his prison cell. Twitchell stated that he had caught up on every Dexter episode that he missed since he was arrested and convicted of first-degree murder. Word of Mark's love for the show was met with such revulsion by those that heard it that Dexter's lead actor, Michael C. Hall, was confronted with the news on a live radio show up in Canada. "I would hope the people's appreciation was more than some sort of fetishization with the kill scenes," he said. "And I wouldn't stop making Dexter because someone like Mark Twitchell was fascinated by it only in that way. I try to tell myself that their fixated nature would have done it one way or the other, but it seems that Dexter had something to do with it. It's genuinely horrifying." Perhaps Michael C. Hall is correct. Perhaps Mark Twitchell had fostered a fascination with the macabre, and that had long predated his love of Dexter, and was bound to hurt someone sooner or later. But there's also little doubt that the violent imagery presented in shows like Dexter have a very particular effect on some people. They act as triggers, making people like Mark want to turn their darkest fantasies into violent, permanent realities.
The way the KFC became the place of mass murder baffled me. This is still one of the most notorious cases that I've ever come across. With working with the investigators department, there are a lot of cases. Cold, unsolvable cases come through the door. But this was especially different, and I was definitely sure that I would never take such case again. This case I got from the southern country in Alabama, and the culprit was one Roger Paul, a 40-year-old man who was living alone with nothing to show for and leave behind. Heath's life had been a roller coaster of traumatic incidences, and I don't wonder he did what he did. I am not justifying the murders he committed, but I knew someone like that, without help and hope, would actually end up doing something like that. When he was around 12, his mother married the boyfriend, and together they molested the boy and abused him, both physically and mentally. So there was the underlying trauma that somehow was pushing him over the edge. He decided to leave them and move to his father, but once he reached there, his father refused to be with him at first, and then later, he used him to get into places and steal stuff. But just a year later, he decided to get rid of him and just dropped him outside the city somewhere alone on his own. It was then when the authorities found him, and he put them in the system. He was one of the foster kids, but being the way he was, he couldn't find the way to deal with the trauma, and he became the kid with the big target behind his back and was bullied heavily in the foster home. And that is where he developed a very introverted personality and stayed behind at everything. Even the foster homes he got were not the very best of the environment that a kid must get. He went through a whole different array of abuse and trauma through foster homes until he was 18. And then he was out of the system and left unguided. And then, with a really shaky education and untreated trauma, he was thrown out in the real world. And that was one of the factors responsible for the incident that happened. Somehow, he landed the job in KFC when he was 23 and managed to get the strict, straight path of life. Then, after a year of working with KFC and getting promoted through the kitchen to cash counter, he found a little bit of stability in his life. The incident occurred one evening on a Monday. The KFC was not very busy. It was empty when accounting for the witness stand and testimony they told the story. It was around 11 in the night, and almost all the staff was already gone, and there was this one girl sitting there and making eye contacts with Roger Paul. He didn't know about the girl, and the girl was continuously eyeing him out and signaling him, but he was too naive to understand. One of the employees told him about the situation, so he decided to act upon it. The woman then started walking towards the bathroom, and the other guy told Roger to follow her, and so Roger did. After Roger followed her, they started fornicating in the bathroom. We knew because we could hear them out. And then later, after almost an hour, we heard her shouting, and then everything went silent. The witnesses had no idea what happened in the bathroom in KFC. When we asked Roger, he said, "So she led me. I had no idea what to do. I thought she wanted to be my girlfriend. We went to the bathroom and we had sex. When she was done, she looked at me and asked for $200. And I thought maybe it was because she wanted it, and I said that all I have is $50, and I cannot really give her more than that. And she looked angry at me and said that she was asking for the money I owed her. And I told her that I don't owe her anything. And then she told me that she is a prostitute, and I refused to believe it. And I told her that I will not pay her anything because I did not know that she was a prostitute, and that she should have told me before fornicating with me. I told her that it is not fair, and then she started screaming, and she said if I don't pay her, she will tell everyone that I raped her. Even though I did not rape her and it was all consensual, she wanted me in the jail, and I said that I will pay her if she stays quiet. And then she started hitting me, and I was trying to stop her, and so I slapped her, and in the moment, she just snapped and accused me of rape and assault. All I wanted was for her to be quiet, so I took my hand and wrapped it around her face to keep her quiet. I did not realize that she died, so I just kept quiet, looking at her and waiting for everyone to leave. But then I asked him about what happened next, to which he said, "So then I knew she was dead, and people have seen her with me. I decided to chop her up in the grinder. I wanted the evidence to be cleared. I wanted it to not be traced back to me. I cut her up in pieces and tried disposing it, but we were out of bags, so I did not know what to do. I took the parts and then fried them up. I thought maybe frying them may be a better way of disposing them, but then I did not realize that the manager will show up so early. He saw me, MacLeod caught me in the act. I did not know what I was supposed to do, so I just tried killing him, but he was much stronger than I was, and he escaped, and then called you guys in. And it is better that you have me here, because when I was killing that girl, chopping her up and frying her, I wasn't feeling the remorse. I was enjoying it. So it is better that I am here. It is all messed up, but if it was not for the childhood trauma and abuse, things would have been different for him.